I'm here to chat to you today about our TRACC software. So we're going to be talking about how TRACC's helpful for transport planning consultants and talking through how some of our 100+ clients are using the software at the moment, and we're going to talk through a couple of case studies of how they've used the software as well. If you have any sort of questions at all, please feel free to kind of ask them at the end. So first of all, talk about our existing clients. They kind of are using the software to answer these type of questions here, and hopefully a few of these will resonate with yourselves. Predominantly, lots of our consultants are using TRACC to help them produce travel time maps for new development sites, something that's quite a contentious issue, especially where we're located in the southeast at the moment. But they're using it to produce travel time maps, and if you need to then start producing them yourselves, TRACC can be the perfect tool to help you out. Also, it's used a lot to help organisations. So an organisation could be a local authority, it could be a university, it could be a hospital, it could be anything else to help manage their transport routes. There's a big growing need to produce travel plans or total travel plans for organisations, and TRACC can help out with that. Sometimes when looking at a travel plan, you might need to propose some changes to that. So the infrastructure could be the location of a walking route or a cycling route or even the office location. And if you ever need to get involved in that, TRACC's a perfect tool to help out there. Sometimes when looking at doing these changes, you're required to go and get funding. So I know people have helped do bids for the local sustainable transport fund and other type of central government funding as well. And TRACC can help produce the evidence required to implement these schemes and to get the initial funding off the ground as well. Also, there's an ongoing need to start promoting more sustainable travel or active travel, and also the knock-on effect in trying to promote modal shift to reduce congestion on the roads and emissions. And TRACC's helping many clients do that at the moment. Also, if you want to do an office relocation, you can look at doing that within the software as well. Lots of these things can be quite complex things to look at, so it's very important that you use a tool that can help you easily and quickly visualize any outputs you've got at the moment. I always like to say they're maps much better than a report. People can work out where they're located on that map, and that's exactly where TRACC can help out. So it allows you to very quickly and accurately produce reliable maps. Now, what's not a reliable map, and what lots of our consultants tend to do at the moment, is we see this all the time. So we see a crow flies map being produced. So here we can see a location in Southampton at the moment, and it's showing what a 1 mile radius effectively looks like away from that site. Now, this 1 mile doesn't take into account any natural geography such as rivers or buildings. So here we can see the River Itchen, which divides the city in two, isn't taken into account. So areas to the east or to the right of the map are effectively allowed to walk over the water to retain within that 1 mile catchment. Is then represented, showing that just over 42,000 people are within that catchment area at the moment. And this is where TRACC can kind of come in. So TRACC is a tool that was launched in November 2013, developed in-house here at BaseMap, and it's a multi-modal travel time tool. So it allows you to effectively model public transport, and by public transport we can look at any mode. Data produces things like a cable car in London, tubes, rail, buses, coaches. You can model all these modes of transport along with traditional car, cycling and walking modes as well. And where it differs from any other type of product on the market is you can easily adjust that transport network as well. So for housing analysis, you can put in where the new roads are going to be, where the new cut-throughs are going to be, where the new cycle paths and walking paths are going to be located. Or if you're looking at removing roads, you can say, well, actually, I'm going to pedestrianise this street, or I'm going to stop people being able to walk on this road because there's been lots of accidents on there. You can do all of that within TRACC. You can also add and remove bus services, or if you want to say, let's see what the effect of Crossrail 2 is, what's the effect of HS2 or the Northern Line extension, you can put that into the software, you can model that, and you can see before and after snapshots of these major infrastructure schemes. Once you've got all this data in there, it's really important to get some really highly detailed outputs from the tool. So predominantly people are producing travel time contours, as we can see in the bottom left, which shows travel time in 10, 20, 30 minutes to get to a site. We can also produce a thing we call an OD path file, which shows the routing which was undertaken to do a journey, and we can see 4 examples of them overlaid onto the map showing different walking routes to a school. We can also produce catchment maps. So on the right hand side, we're showing different colours representing where the closest destination for someone to access is based on public transport journey times. And if you do like going into the detail, we have some very detailed reports that can be produced out of the system as well. So we can produce a matrices showing every origin to destination and their journey time and journey distance when required. Or we can bring in detailed demographic data as well, showing you what percentage of the population can get to a site, or which site is the most accessible by a certain demographic, say the unemployed as an example. And you can bring all this type of information together and all these different key data sets to then enhance your initial map. So here we've got our map now showing what 1 mile actually looks like, and what we've done is we plugged in a footpath network and a walking network and a road network to show where these barriers are located. So here we can see the River Itchen is no longer being crossed, only at where there's a crossing point location at the moment. And we can see that 1 mile is now only covering just over 15,000 people. So we've dropped by almost 2/3 actually when using accurate data and producing reliable maps as well. And then during the what if scenario, so what if we put a new footbridge in? Can we improve access to the east of the city? And you can very easily model that, showing that actually if we put a new footbridge in at this location, we can see this much more area, an extra 3 and a bit thousand more people are able to access the location. And that could be the starting point of any kind of funding work to put a new footbridge across the river might require. So our first case study we're looking at today is for a transport planning consultancy called Mode. When they first started using the software, they were relatively small. And as a small organisation, they were very carefully planning on where they invested their limited resources. So they didn't want to spend lots of time doing work or investing in software packages if it wasn't worthwhile. However, they did have a need to produce travel time maps. They did lots of work for development companies or providing advice for development sites, and they had a real need to produce travel time maps. And first of all, they started using Google to do that. They thought Google was great. Google could do that kind of analysis for them. However, they found out that because they could do it one at a time, it took them a long time to produce. And actually then found out the results weren't always accurate because sometimes it's based on live data. So actually travel times were poorly representative, looks at their bad time. Also, it wasn't very good when they started using it for looking at other modes of transport. They can look at car and public transport as well. And when they wanted to analyse many different sites, or say how far you can get in 10 minutes, you had to start doing many different queries in one go, but it took a long time to do because you can do it one at a time. So then they very quickly came across and they used TRACC, and it was really transformational in the way in which the business went about going after future work. So first of all, they were able to produce very quick and accurate maps. You can see on the right hand side here showing travel time to libraries. But it was a key part of the business. So first of all, it helped them save time, so it's been anywhere near as much time collecting and collating information from things like Google, and less time meant less cost, so they could actually lower the cost for going after these projects, making it much more competitively priced against other organisations. However, what they also found is by producing this information, the information was far and above what they could look at before, so they could have a much more attractive pricing model. They could give much more detailed results for less, which they felt gave them a competitive edge over any other kind of transport planner around, be it small organisation or large organisations. That are so transformational that they actually then started using TRACC for other areas of the business as well that they weren't using for it before. So it really became a key part of their kind of working methodology going forwards. So we've got a nice little quote here from James. We've got a more full detailed example of this case study on our website. You can see the address at the bottom. I suggest going to have a look at that. But what I think the best type of part of this quote is to cherry pick something out is how using TRACC allowed them to make better and more informed decisions on the deliverability of sites to clients and local authorities, and again allowing them to compete with other organisations really kind of helped them going forwards. So planning is a really kind of big aspect of the software. We've got various town planners using the tool at the moment. I'm not sure where you're located, but where we are in the located in Guildford in the southeast, there's a real kind of increased pressure to build more houses. And with the deregulation of planning, any type of analysis that's done needs to be looked at sustainably as well. So that means ensuring that robust evidence is provided to look at where a new housing site might be, and any obligations that are required under Section 106 agreements are kind of fulfilled. And picking up on the robust evidence, this is really important as well, because I know where I'm located, we had the council came and said we want to produce these new housing sites in this location, and people turned up and said, oh, I don't believe this to be right. We're going to be much more increased pressure on traffic, and how's public transport will be taken into account. There's been much more kind of demand on our local services. So you need to ensure that you can come back with a robust evidence base to stand up to anything that kind of the public can throw back at you. Also, it's really important to have a tool that allows you to look at access between developments and essential services. So how many people can get to a site, how far away is the closest library, how far away is the supermarket, the doctor's surgery, and this type of analysis is really important to help get that kind of planning through and getting that kind of evidence base for yourselves. And this is why existing methodologies such as in London PTEL don't offer that. They haven't got that robust evidence. So PTEL will give you a score for a location but won't look at where the walk time is to the closest supermarket or local doctor's surgery. Look at just the frequency of that service. So it's not a very accurate way, and TRACC's actually been used to overturn these type of decisions in the past. So by using TRACC, the first thing you'll be able to do straight away is help clients get planning approved. We've got many clients who said they've used TRACC to overturn things like PTELs in the past, which is a really important thing. It's effectively what you want to do with the software. And the great thing for that as well is when going for planning, many local authorities are using TRACC at the moment, as well as other kind of NHS bodies as well. So if you go in, TRACC's quite well known within some organisations. It helps give you extra strength to any proposals that you put in as well. And the great thing is you can very quickly and easily deliver accessibility plans or travel time maps, such as is shown on the right hand side here. And again, you can very easily look at the multi-modal side of things. So you can use a walking map and a cycling map, as well as public transport to different services. So you can look at access to doctors, schools, supermarkets and hospitals, and you can adjust the kind of settings within the application for that. So you can say, right, I'm looking at access to a doctor's surgery. I might look at access on a Tuesday between 9 and midday. Looking at access to hospitals, such as the map here is showing access on a Wednesday between 8 and 10, and to a school might be 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning. And you can also adjust these settings. So if you're looking at urban and rural locations, you can adjust how far someone's likely to walk to get to a bus stop. So in an urban environment, you might look at only a 400-metre distance to get to a bus stop, but in a rural location, you might increase that to be 800 metres or a kilometre in some instances as well. And you can do all of that within the tool to produce evidence as required. So the great thing as well is once you've got that data in, you can produce bespoke reports as well. So you can say, actually, this is as a CSV file, this is actually what the journey time is to get from A to B. You can be much more detailed. You can not just look at your site, you can compare to competitor sites as well, and you can do much more complex and larger calculations as required. And the great thing as well is with all these type of things, the high level of accuracy in the reports that you give means that before you start digging in the ground, you've got a really kind of robust evidence base to reduce any financial risks that might be involved in any decision making. And the good thing as well, as I said earlier on, all this type of analysis has held up a public inquiry. The DfT, for example, used TRACC for quite a lot of their modelling work and for producing their national journey time statistics. That's a real kind of good level of thing to say at a public inquiry. It's used by organisations that do this day in and day out. And lots of times you've got a Section 106 kind of requirement to kind of improve the public transport of the area, or you've got a infrastructure levy being charged on your site. You can actually get the front foot as well, so you can actually say where these adjustments should be made on the network and where the stops should be located. So an example of this is showing a current site location at the moment with the black lines representing a new housing site on the edge of a city. And what we can do is we can show travel time to that site, in this example to hospitals. Then what we've done is we've plotted 4 new bus stop locations at the moment, and only half of that site is actually accessible in its current state. And that's due to walking distance to the closest bus stop. So without them red dots here, you can't really see it on the map, but the closest stops are actually quite far away. So then after producing these 4 stops, we can then assign a timetable to it with a view of getting the whole site accessible within 20 minutes. So here we can see on the timetable, as a screenshot from TRACC, we can see the 4 new stops from stop 4 to stop 1. And we can see the first service departs at 7:51 Monday to Friday from that service, and as it continues onto its normal route. So we can see what the effect is of that. So currently we've got access between 10 and 20 minutes covering about, I'd say, a quarter of the site, and 20 to 30 minutes covering the other quarter of the site, and the other half of the site is not accessible at all. As soon as we use these new bus services here, we can see a massive increase in accessibility, not just for the site, but for the surrounding area as well, which is something that's a really kind of important thing to promote. We can see around the stop locations, actually journey times are going into the 10-minute category in some of these locations, which is a really important thing when trying to get that site approved for planning. And the whole site is actually within 20 minutes as well. So again, really kind of clear evidence base that can be reported and go alongside any planning application to help you get that approved in the end. And to give an idea, from start to finish, it took less than 2 hours from loading all the data and then producing these maps. So it's a really quick and easy way to get that evidence for you. So leading on to that, so travel planning is another real key aspect of the software. So TRACC's been used quite a lot to help organisations, so as I touched upon earlier on, these could be hospitals, universities, large employers, to help inform them of things such as car parking permit allocation. If they wanted to relocate the office from one location to another one, what's the effect on staff travel time? They can look at analysing that as well, and also helping them with their subsidised bus services as well. So it's been used a lot to say, we've got our university services running here at the moment. Can we get more money for better bang for our buck? So an example I'm going to very quickly talk through now is how it was used in Oxford for car parking permit allocation. Again, we've got a case study on our website. It's worthwhile having a look on this. But they had a need to effectively reduce the amount of cars parking on site at the moment. There's many more staff members coming onto the site. And they decided actually they wanted to do their analysis based on travel time rather than distance. So they then modelled all the postcodes of their staff members. And they then said, right, actually, as a staff member, if you can get to your place of work within a 25-minute cycle, a 25-minute walk, or a 45-minute public transport journey in both directions, both getting to the site and home from the site, then you're not allowed to drive in anymore. And if you're outside of that service, so it took you half an hour to walk and an hour to get the bus, then effectively you were allowed to park on site. And TRACC gave that robust evidence that they could then use to inform and put these kind of decisions into practice. And the type of analysis they used for that was a matrix file. So this is effectively showing in the left-hand column a series of postcodes, and then it's showing their cycle and walk travel times to get to their place of work, as well as their distance to get there. And it's also giving their public transport journey time in both directions as well. So giving you all that raw evidence. You can have thousands, you have tens of thousands, you have millions of rows of this data if you wanted to. You have hundreds of millions of rows if you've got a powerful enough machine. You've got that kind of real flexibility to produce this detailed analysis to suit your needs. So that kind of covers TRACC today. I really suggest having a look on our website. If you want any more information or a copy of the slides, please email info@basemap.co.uk. We've got some other great information on our website as well. We've got a webinar that shows off our highways analyst tool, which is really popular in the private sector because it shows congestion on roads outside development sites. It's worthwhile having a look at that. And our other products, DataCut, is also a really useful tool that's just having a look at as well. But thank you very much for your time today. And if you've got any sort of questions, please feel free to ask them now.